Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the last session of the day, at least here. My name is Maria Janelli, and I work at the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. And before we get started, I just want to bring your attention to the questions that are up here on the screen. You also have a copy of them in front of you. For the next hour or so, the focus of my presentation and my colleague Jennifer's presentation will be around these guiding questions. So we ask that you just keep them in mind as we progress through our presentations. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how folks at AMNH have kept these questions in mind as we've developed courses for Coursera. So I have lessons and I have questions for you. So AMNH has developed 3 courses on Coursera's platform. The first is Genetics and Society, a course for educators. The second is The Dynamic Earth, a course for educators. And the third is Evolution, a course for educators. And you may have gotten the theme here. We build courses that are in the teacher professional development track that Coursera offers. So all 3 of our courses are really professional development courses for science teachers. And this is the basic structure of a course. We have a content strand and we have a practice strand. And the content strand of the course consists of videos, essays, quizzes, and one of our co-instructors is a museum scientist. And on the practice side, we have videos, assignments, and classroom resources, and the other co-instructor is a science teacher. So that's the model that we have for all 3 courses. Despite the fact that every course has a course for educators, we did not get just educators in our courses. In fact, almost 60% of the people in our courses were not teachers, which was a little surprising to us. So the data you're looking at here represents 3 courses offered twice. So in 6 offerings, 42% of our students were teachers and the rest were not. And interestingly, that number pretty much holds up for all of our courses. In every single course, between 39 and 43% of our students were teachers, and everybody else was not. But on the right, you see the breakdown for how long people have been teaching, and that's a pretty even split across the options from pre-service to 20-year veterans. So we have a nice mix of teachers in our classrooms. So we didn't get our target audience. Nevertheless, teachers are the target audience for the museum. So the big questions, intention and motivation, we're all trying to figure out, why are people coming here? What makes them stay? Even worse, what makes them leave? And we're trying to figure that out for our teacher audience. And we do this by asking pre-course surveys and post-course surveys in all of our courses. And we know that most of the respondents took one of our courses to deepen their content knowledge and to access the museum's material. And that's true regardless of whether or not they were teachers. Some of our teachers did take the course to earn PD credit, but most did not take it for that reason. And many people reported that they did not take the course to connect with others, which made us feel good because we could worry less about the forums and the inactivity that was happening there. People weren't there to talk to each other. And then you can see a quote from one of our surveys from someone who said, I really love the course, but I'm not participating. I just want the essays. And so we know that we have a mix of people who are taking our courses, and we're trying to address the motivations of all of them, keeping our eye on the prize for us, which is that teacher audience. So after we ran our first course, we looked at data, and then we ran our second course and we looked at data. And when we ran our third course and looked at the data, we realized that we had 3 funnels. And this funnel appears in all of our courses, and in our own meetings we just call it the funnel effect. But it's useful for us to use as a metaphor when we talk about the data. So again, this is data for 6 courses, and on the left you have the people in the course, and on the right you have what they're doing. And total enrolled is like 62,000, but we all know that's a meaningless number. Most of those people never really show up. And then I have peak enrollment and enrollment at the end of the course, and those don't matter anymore because Coursera has stopped tracking them. When they were tracked, those were in line in that hierarchy. They were after enrolled, and then enrollment at the end was after the peak. And then we have active users, and that's just people who log into the course. And we don't really know what they do because they don't watch videos. They do something, but it's not watch videos. And then at the end, we have a metric that we call AMNH active, and that's people who actually watch a video. So those are the bottom 2 are the people we're really trying to capture because they're doing something in the course. So we have the enrollment numbers, but we don't really think about engagement in that way. And then on the right, of course, we have unique video views, and that's the high number for everybody in every course. That's what people are there to do. But our essays are 50% video and 50% essay. So we wanted to know, are people reading these essays? And they are. It's the second most popular activity after watching videos. So that was good for us to know because then we could put more time and resources into writing more essays. The next we have quizzes. We have 1 quiz a week in each 4-week course, so it's 4 total. Forum participation is low, and there's only 1 course in which we have a forum post that is required for a grade. So this statistic doesn't surprise us, given that most people aren't coming into the course to meet new people and to connect with other educators. And then, of course, at the bottom, we have people who complete the assignment and people who enroll in signature track. So what are some of our assessment outcomes when we dive into this data a little bit? This is a list of metrics we look at for 1 course. So this is our evolution course. So who was graded and who earned a statement of accomplishment? And then we get those low percentages that everybody gets. What percentage of people got a certificate who were enrolled in the course? And it's like 4. And we're supposed to feel good about 4. But we look at the 2 at the bottom. The percentage of students who submitted the quiz in the first week and went on to earn a certificate, and the percentage of people who did the assignment and earned a certificate. So we know we give the assignment in week 2. The people who complete the assignment in that week are pretty likely to stick around and finish the course with us. And for this course, it was almost 90%. So those are the people we really want to go after and engage in our conversations in the post-course survey and in follow-up afterward. So we also look at content outcomes, and we also look at practice. So for the content, what I have here is a screenshot of a Facebook post. So this is, again, from the evolution course. Somebody went out and made a Facebook page for the students. A bunch of people signed up, and there was a lot of communication here. And one of our quizzes involved a photo of an evolutionary tree, and we asked a question about it. And you see the image of the evolutionary tree there, and the lines that you see in black are from the quiz. But all of the red circles and annotations are from the student. And the student was struggling and needed help. And so in this case, it's a woman. So she downloaded the image, saved it, edited it herself in her own software, and then uploaded it to Facebook with this question. And there were 30 or 40 responses with other people who did the same thing, downloading the image, editing it their own ways, and kicking it back up. So this is an example of people actually wrestling with the content in a way that we could see and keep in mind as we consider offering the course in the future. So what does assessment look like on the practice side? This is a question we had posted in the forum from a teacher who was asking permission to use one of our essays in her own science class. So this is evidence for us that people are taking the material that we're providing and using it with their own students, which is something we hoped that they would do in this teacher professional development course. And then another outcome of practice we have is a personal email that was sent to Dr. Kinsler, who teaches our Earth course. And the Earth course is the one that has the required forum component. We ask people to go out into the field in their own neighborhoods, select a local geologic feature, take photos of it, post those to the forum, and write a description. It's part 1 of a 2-part assignment. And Dr. Kinsler models this assignment in a video that is shot in Central Park, where she's looking at a particular rock formation near the museum. And she got this email from a teacher who said, usually when I get to this unit, I take all my kids to the museum and we go to the Hall of Gems and Minerals. And this time I took them to Central Park and I did with them what you did for us. And so that was a really, really powerful outcome for us. We got a follow-up email afterward, after the trip to Central Park was over, and the teacher said, thank you so much, because I saw you do this for us. I realized that I didn't have to be a geologist to do it with my own students. So that's another example of how the material we're providing is turning around into teacher practice. Last 2 slides. So in our post-course survey, we ask, how do you plan to use the following course materials in your own classrooms? And we have essays, videos, the assignment, and classroom resources. And this just lets us know, what do people think they will do with the material we've given them? And what we're in the process of doing now is a follow-up survey saying, have you actually used any of this If so, how? And we're asking people's permission to contact them either via email or on the phone to talk to them a little bit more and learn about if and how they're using our material. And all of this information will help us improve the courses that we're going to be offering in the future and help us to better design new courses that are kind of on the roadmap for us. So these are some of the ways we've thought about engagement and how to meet our learners where they are, how to find out where they come from and see where they hope to be and try to find a middle balance. And I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague Jennifer, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the work that she's been doing. Similar theme, different area.
All right, so just to reiterate the guiding questions that sort of unite both our presentations and the discussion we hope to engender afterwards. What's the background and other information about your learners, and why is it important to know? How will you obtain that information? And what will you do to meet your learners where they are? My name is Jennifer Deboer, and I am currently in job transition. I've been a postdoc at the MIT Teaching and Learning Lab for the past 2 years, and I'll start as faculty at Purdue in about 6 days. So I'm excited for a number of reasons, but one of those is that we're using some online modules in a blended environment in that classroom. So I'm eager to continue some of this research and see what plays out in terms of meeting students where they're at and trying to support them in their learning goals. I'm happy to be here with the director of the Teaching and Learning Lab, Lori Breslow, who will help Maria and I facilitate the discussion, of course with Maria and with all of you. I'm eager to hear about your experiences as practitioners in a number of different contexts and what you do, who your learners are, etc. I'm going to focus in particular on 2 factors in this whole array of characteristics that describe where students are, and these are language and location. This is in part because of my interest as an international and comparative education researcher, but also because we show empirically that these are important for student learning. So again, with the guiding questions that you have in front of you, I'll give you some of the findings from our particular example study, looking at who our students are, how we got that information, why it was important for learning, and what might be done to individualize learning, both the possibilities and what's actually being done in MOOC classrooms. Again, in order to better understand our learners and meet them where they're at, we need to determine what factors matter in that interaction between a virtual classroom and the real-world context. So as I mentioned in our study, we focus on the factors of language and geographic location, and we use both analysis of variance and regression modeling to empirically look at the relationships between these background off-platform characteristics and students' performance in terms of their final grade in the MOOC classroom. In the research that I'm focusing on today, we ask first, how do language and location characteristics interact with, moderate, mediate the relationship with other characteristics, such as student behaviors on the platform? And then, is there a significant relationship between language and location, 2 important background characteristics, and students' achievement in this class? And this is with the larger goal of understanding implications for using knowledge of students' background information in MOOCs for both course design, running courses, and more extensively for policy decisions. The specific analysis that we conducted uses data from one particular course, but we have some anecdotal evidence from feedback from collaborators that our findings might apply more broadly. And of course, I'd be interested in hearing during our discussions whether these findings do or don't apply in your own contexts. The data that we use come from the first MOOC that was offered by MIT on the edX platform. It ran from March to June in 2012 and was a circuits and electronics course, normally geared towards sophomores in course 6, which is electrical engineering and computer science, and taught in this building. You can see a small screen grab from that particular course. We had a number of different sources of information from which we could directly glean or infer background information. as well as observe student behaviors and performance on their assessments in the class. The sources of our data include clickstream data, from which we can glean students' IP addresses and therefore infer their geographic location. We can look at their behaviors and every single click that they make on the platform to see how they're using course resources like homework problems, videos, and that also provided us information on their profiles. There was a profile page they could fill out. And so that's where we saw self-identified language information. In addition, we had the text of all the discussion forum participation, so we could see not only whether students posted, but what they were posting. We could see their words. And for a limited group of students, we had an end-of-course survey that provides more information on who they are, so where they're from, educational and home background, factors like that. So I'll start, in light of these guiding questions, thinking about who were the students and what information we have with a focus on language as a characteristic. So in the student profile, which was filled out by the vast majority of students, one of the fields that they could use to describe themselves was language. That's all they said. It was an open-ended response form. While a notable minority of students put 2 or more languages down in that field, we focused on the first language that was listed for all of the students who responded. These were the top 12 language groups. And although English, which is the language of the class, was a notable majority of students reporting that first, over 15% of them reported Spanish. Then you can see Portuguese, the languages and dialects of South Asia. And there is a notable fall-off, of course, after English. But we have to remember that in the MOOC context, these small percentages still mean a large number of students. So this is a percentage out of 108,000 students who are clicking on the site. And still, there's almost 10% of the students whose languages aren't even listed here. So looking at the myriad languages that were reported pushed us to go the next step and look at the broader linguistic context and the interaction between these 2 factors. And interestingly, while this was a class that was entirely in English, the majority of students in the course were located by IP addresses in non-English predominant countries. So this kind of sparked our interest, and we went another step further to see if there were significant differences in performance and behavior between 4 groups of students. And these were, on the upper left, students who reported English first and were in a predominantly English-speaking country, students who reported English first and were not in an English country, students who reported another language first but were in a predominantly English-speaking country, and finally students who reported another language and were in a non-English country. Interestingly, we found significant differences in both performance and behavior. We can see notably higher performance for students in non-English countries, and the highest for students who, while they're in a non-English country, they're reporting English first as their language. In addition, there are differences in how students are using the learning materials between these 4 groups. So note that of students who report another language but are in predominantly English countries, they have the lowest number of homework attempts, while students who report another language and are in a non-English country have the highest number of homework attempts. And as we might expect, students who report another language have the lowest average number of discussion forum posts, which are often but not always conducted in English. While interestingly, those high-achieving students in non-English speaking countries who report English on their profile have the highest number of discussion forum posts. So we found some significant differences both in performance and in how students were using the platform by language. So now let's look at one more factor that we investigated to understand where our learners are and how to meet them. In this case, literally where the students are, geographically speaking. I won't go into a lot of the other work that we've done on country factors such as income level, but we'll focus here on urbanicity, city size, and student mobility for individual students. But I do want to acknowledge that there are a number of factors that go along with the geographic context that we have found to be important. And again, we identified students via their IP addresses and noted where they most frequently logged in from, and also were able to match that with a city size database. Participants, and in particular high performers, are concentrated in large urban centers. Overall, being in a larger city was not related to higher achievement once you control for behaviors and other student background factors. However, in certain locations, and indeed these were in countries with major urban spaces and a notable rural-urban divide, there was a strong relationship, a positive relationship between city size, being in a large urban center, and grade in the class. You can see student clusters of students in our heat map of student login locations. You can see a concentration in urban centers, for example, the east coast of the US. And now I want to note that we found students from nearly every country in the world, but the dots also correspond to the number of students logging on from cities. So you can't really see a number of the cities that are actually on here. For example, you see a large dot in Cape Town, South Africa, but much smaller dots in the rest of the country. But further complicating our measurement and issues of understanding our learners, as students are wont to do, they don't always behave in a nice, neat, easy to measure way. And they're very mobile. A small percentage of students access the site from multiple countries. And if we zoom in, we can see that a notable percentage accessed the site from multiple cities within the same country. So this might lead us to infer that our students it's a particular kind of student. Over 30% accessing from multiple locations, a highly mobile group that might already have access to a global community. And we did indeed find notable differences in the types of resources used by those students who were logging on from multiple cities and multiple countries. For example, in terms of the proportional use of resources, you see those students who are travelers, so to speak, we find them in more than one city. They're using the lecture video much less in terms of their overall proportional use of the site, which makes sense. Lecture videos require consistent connection to be able to be streamed. On the other hand, those travelers are spending more of their time, proportionally speaking, on the homework, which we've shown in other work to be related to higher achievement. And so being a traveler was related to being a higher achieving student. So to summarize, both language and location were important predictors of achievement. They're important for student learning. What does that mean for these factors indicating how we can meet our learners where they are? So for example, with language, we can think about presenting information via multiple modes, so a best practice in teaching and learning anyways. And to a certain extent, this was done in the class. So the lecture videos were juxtaposed with the running transcript of what was being said in the videos, but this is something that can be extended even further. Location was also an important characteristic. We need to recognize that internet connectivity is an issue in a number of contexts. And again, there are other factors besides these two that we know from some of our other work that are important for achievement in the MOOC space. So more broadly, some of the implications of our work looking at the relationship between background factors and achievement. First, we want to gather individual student background information from the beginning of the course. So for example, a pre-course survey instrument. We want to identify important ways that individual characteristics fit into context. So the example of language. It's not only the individual student's language, but what that means in the broader linguistic context of that country. And finally, we want to scaffold the learning opportunities for students within that MOOC, thinking about getting students from where they're at academically to that next step, and the ways that we can actually serve the intended learning outcomes of the MOOC. So with that, I'm going to finish, and I look forward to hearing about your experiences in the discussion that we're going to have. So I'll invite Maria up. I'll remind everyone of the guiding questions. And we're going to explain the discussion that we have structured for you now. So this was at the request of the conference organizers. They asked for the last 40 minutes of our time together to be devoted to a discussion. So we want this to be as interactive as possible. So Marie, if you want to explain what we're going to do.
Sure. So for the next 2 minutes, we want you to just take some time and think about how these guiding questions apply to the work you're doing. And we want you to think about challenges, ideas, and most importantly, solutions, because we're interested in hearing about how you've met some of the challenges. And then after that 2 minutes, we'd like you to get together in groups of 2 to 3, whoever's nearby you, and just share what you're doing in your own universities or museums or other organizations, what your role is, and how you've thought about these 3 guiding questions. And we'll meet in those small groups for 10 minutes, and then come back and ask somebody from your group to share with the rest of us. So we'll start now, so take a minute to just either quietly reflect or jot down some of your own ideas, and then we'll let you know when to break into groups.
We'll leave the discussion structure up, and we'll bring you one of these question sheets.
Anybody else need a question sheet?
Renee, nice to meet you. You're in Cicero?
Yeah, I'm working at Alpha Group in the Janelli O'Reilly.
Okay, yeah. What exactly are you asking?
So if you haven't already joined a group or met your neighbor, go ahead and do that. It's 4:31. You'll have until about 4:41 to discuss these questions. We have about 5 more minutes.
So take 1 minute to wrap up your thoughts. We can, if we want to go up. Oh, yeah, yeah, you want to grab one and then... Yeah. All right, so let's come together as a large group. You've had the chance to reflect a little bit about your own experience. Maria and I were talking before the session, and it's not often that we get the chance to reflect on the experiences, especially in a pretty fast-paced field right now. And you've also gotten the chance to talk to one or two other people about their experiences. And in the remaining time, we'd love to hear from each group. In particular, we'd like to hear maybe some illuminating stories. So what was something that struck you in your conversations, and what were some perhaps challenges that you faced? But as Maria said, what were some solutions that you found that worked, or maybe didn't work as well, but that's a learning experience that the rest of the crowd can have. So maybe let's just start over here, and we can go around to each group if you want to share out to the entire audience.
Well, Joe and I are sort of on the opposite ends of our...
Sorry, could you tell everyone who you are as well?
I'm Michael Senemo. I'm from Columbia X. And, excuse my voice. Joe and I seem to be right now at opposite ends of sort of MOOC construction. Joe is constructing a computer science MOOC. I'm constructing a history MOOC. So the idea of creating this environment where, what are we looking for? Or what are we trying to structure it so our learners are able to do well in that course? And Joe was mentioning that what's really important is knowing the state of knowledge, that the students are at when they enter this course that requires math and other programming, as well as, their educational background. And for me, it's more, how do I create this environment where students, how do I create assessments that would be a little bit above just your normal, say, true and false, multiple choice? How do I get students in a history class, especially the history of the United States, US Civil War, how do we have debate and discussion that doesn't fly off the rail, at the same time, allow students to really engage? So that's the different kind of problem that I'm having compared to Joe.
We worried about that. We worried about that fly off the rail problem, particularly with our evolution course. We weren't sure how the discussion space was going to go, and we were really, really pleased that we only had to block one student. So I hope you have that kind of success. You want to go to that side?
Yeah. So, is this group here? Whoever wants to share.
Am I really the representative?
Yes, and we're encouraging it.
Yes. I really haven't had the chance to collect our collective ideas. I'm Cormac McGrath from Karolinska Institutet, together with
Gerhard Sonnet, Harvard University.
And Jackie from Smithsonian X.
So the conversation, we talked about several things, but the conversation I think boiled down to, and correct me if I misrepresent you, some of our courses are coming from campus. So it's courses that may be given on campus. Karolinska is a prestigious medical university in Europe, Harvard obviously, and the Smithsonian as well, even though it's not a university. So how do we provide courses that are true to the nature of the university, but at the same time opening them up to the man on the street? And that's a different aspect of language, I think, than perhaps the one that we addressed earlier, which looked more at mother tongue language. So that's kind of the conversation we were having, and we would love to talk more about it.
Any experiences that anyone else has had along those lines thus far? Bridging that gap between the university and its sort of institutional identity and the broader participants in the MOOC space.
Hi, I'm Ellen Nettie from the International Monetary Fund. We have some of the same issues. We teach applied economics and finance to government officials, people who work for their central banks and finance ministries. So we really targeted the content of our courses towards that audience, but we wanted to open this up to the general public as well. And we're still analyzing the data from our first MOOC, so I don't have the answers yet, but we're wondering whether we should, as we design courses going forward, whether we should have more opportunities to go more in depth if they're members of our target audience or have a stronger background. Can we somehow build another track in? I mean, the idea was that we would invest the resources to target this, traditional audience, and then hopefully the marginal cost of opening it up to the world wouldn't be too high. But we're thinking about whether there are ways we can customize the content so that we can meet the needs of both audiences, because I think they are a bit different.
There's another comment to follow up right here. Yeah.
Hi, Laura Weiner from McGill University, and our courses were very general public, which meant that we had people, who were in high school to, retired chemistry profs, and the first course was in chemistry. So one of the things we did for that was in every single section, if you want to know more, and had paths off so that people could kind of branch and come back, but it wasn't central. So the central core was actually fairly, narrow in a sense, but I think that that's a way of allowing people to explore what they're interested in, and without having to do so much that it would turn you off.
Next group, any volunteers?
Hi, this is Elle Wang from Columbia Teachers College. So our group had a really nice discussion. And the first question we wanted to ask ourselves before we ask what kind of information we need to collect from our learners is, why do we care about it? Do we care about whether our learners are happy or not? Since it's free, what is responsibilities of our faculty instructors to make sure we have as many happy learners as possible? And that really prompted us to think about the different types of learners we have and how to assess them according to their specific need, especially giving attention between the traditional online learners and the special MOOC learners. For example, we noticed that I myself was also part of the MOOC instructor team and also a MOOC researcher myself. We noticed that some of our learners, they would, in the first week, download all of our videos and learning materials, and they would just go back and never come back to the main Coursera interface. And we were lucky to know some of the people who are colleagues of ours, so we can substantiate that actually happened. And they're actually happy learners, but if we were not, acquaintances to each other, how would we go to get the data to say that that's part of the benefit of our MOOCs? So information hidden like that, the so-called fragmented data, how do we go to collect that data to tell us what we can do as faculty instructors to do better, or designers to change anything, or even for investors to say whether they wanted to or they need to invest again for the same type of MOOCs?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. We have this really rich and vibrant, huge amount of data, but still we're missing some pieces that we've seen as students move between the platform and off platform. Another response over here.
Yeah, I'm Joe Warren from Rice University. Actually, she made an interesting comment about happy learners. We teach a class, and we don't have happy students. Actually, the students that go through the class, I think, learn a lot. Now, I don't know if I could prove that, if you put me to it, but I'll give you an example. You talked about your students went to your class, they download material and disappear. So we make our students unhappy, and we dole it out a week at a time. So it's very much a cohort-style system. And the reason we do that is because the experts that want to take the class because it's maybe status or they're brushing up or something like that, we force them to come back to class over and over because they would love to grab all our material and problems and disappear and go off and do their class. But they come back, and as a result, there's a significant mentoring of the strong students answering forum posts, things like that, where those students actually turn out to be a giant asset to the class. So that's an example of where we do something that doesn't make the students happy, but I think it yields a better learning experience.
I'll bring the mic down. I just have a quick question for show of hands. In thinking about the third question and listening to what some of you have said so far, I'm wondering if you got this information in real time, if you could know who your learners were at your organizations, do you actually have the capacity to change your course design while it's live? Or is this more of a reflective process where you hope to be able to apply it in the future? So capacity to edit on the fly?
I think the capacity, I don't think that's the way to go, really, in terms of capacity to edit on the fly, because you'll never have that bandwidth. You'll never have it, and from one course to the next, it'll always be different. And I think a more productive way to go is really trying to create structures that the students bring a lot of themselves to, so that they're bringing their problems to it. So the instructional design is where you have to do that prep work up front. I think in terms of saying, okay, this is going to be the assignment is we want you, and you have to think about what the learning outcomes then are. We want the students to develop certain analytical skills. So do you really care about the specific problem that they're applying it to? Probably not so much. So if you structure the task so that the students can bring themselves to the task, then you don't have to try and anticipate all that variety. It's requisite variety. We'll never have the variety. If there's 20,000 of them, we don't have 20,000 people.
Yeah, so you asked about changing content on the fly. and this is a nice segue just into our group's kind of discussion. So my name's Tim Morey, and I work for Johnson & Johnson, for a medical device company that's part of Johnson & Johnson. And we're experimenting with edX to transform the way we educate our surgeon customers, mostly surgeons. So you talked about your courses that are designed specifically for teachers, but then you got some non-teachers in your course. We designed our first course for surgeons, and also, of course, got some non-surgeons in the course. But one thing we did was beta test 1 week's worth of content with our intended audience. So we got a group of surgeons, beta tested our content with them, and that led us to make a pretty significant change. So the thing that we did is, so this first course was about weight loss surgery, and it was basically telling bariatric surgeons, weight loss surgeons, that what they think they know about the surgery and how it works is actually kind of wrong, based on some research that we've initiated. So most surgeons have like a PowerPoint type slide deck that they do when they do kind of community outreach stuff, when they have patients coming and considering weight loss surgery. And so our activity that we proposed was to have them, as they worked through our content, we would have them pause every 3 to 4 little mini lectures and then construct some PowerPoint slides that they would then hopefully use in their practice. And we thought pedagogically makes total sense. When we asked them to do that and we beta tested it with them, they all unanimously just not only disliked it, I would say despised the idea that we were actually going to ask them to like put some effort into the course. And it was,
actually, I just said to Shem, boy, what a great idea.
right?
I guess not.
He was the brains behind it, so you can credit him with the great idea, and we loved it too. But our surgeons hated that idea, and so based on that, it was a small beta test, but it was so overwhelming that we made the change. They just didn't like, they said, look, I've already got slides. If I want to create new slides, I'll do that on my own time. I don't need you telling me that I need to go do this.
Unless you're working with surgeons.
Yeah. So you asked about the background of our audience.
Yeah.
They are their own animals, for sure. What we did instead is we basically constructed the slides for them and then gave them at the end of each week as rewards.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Also his great brilliant. So I have to credit Nathan with the good ideas, but yeah. So anyway.
But we only have a couple more minutes. So there are a few last groups who maybe didn't share. If you have any brief thoughts that you want to share with everyone. In the front and then here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Renee Kizilcic from Stanford. We talked with Quentin from CSAIL about the first question, what background and other information is good to collect. And I suppose in terms of sharing something important in a short amount of time, we found at Stanford that actually giving out a pre-course survey before the course or right when the course starts is not as good as giving it a little bit later in, because a lot of the people who start right at the beginning, they just explore. And they are gone very soon, and you end up not having data for a lot of the people you really care about who stay in the course, who join a little bit later. Another point is we got some bad feedback on some of the demographic questions. So especially when we ask for race and ethnicity, which in the literature on education has been very important variables to look at. Some people responded very badly to that. Also, in terms of psychology and stereotype threat, one might even imagine that asking for gender, right, could activate certain threats for females, especially when taking courses in the engineering space. So these are, I think, some important questions to think about when we collect our data and how we do it, and what effects measurement might have.
We'll probably have to wrap up. I know that there's a lot of additional discussion that we can have about those questions and a number of the questions that everyone's raised here, but I want to thank all of you and my co-presenter and Lori and the conference folks for a fascinating hour that you've spent with us. And so I think, as per Kalyan's instructions, head out that way. So thank you.
Thank you.